Utah Senator Mike Lee wants to ban nationwide pornography, and he wants to do so in a way that would also permit him to ban a whole lot of video games. Mike Lee, Utah, Mormon, loves Donald Trump because Donald Trump would never do something like, have sex with an adult film actress and then pay her $130,000 to cover that up, because when Donald Trump did that, allegedly, Melania was at home pregnant with their son Barron. Mike Lee loves Donald Trump, but he hates the pornography. So how does he want to do that? He introduced a bill which doesn't ban pornography. What it does is it changes the definition of obscenity and what is or is not obscene. So by redefining the term obscenity, you would be able to apply this statute to any number of things. And so there's a woman named Mary Miller, Republican from Illinois, in the House. So Mike Johnson has introduced this bill in the Senate. Representative Mary Miller has introduced a companion bill in the House. It's called the Interstate Obscenity Definition Act, IOTA. It is intended to get all pornography off of the internet. Mike Lee said, "Our bill updates the legal definition of obscenity for the internet age, so this content can be taken down and its peddlers prosecuted." But this definition, where did I find this? So I found a good article about this in Reason Magazine on Reason.com, an article dated today. It would ban things like Game of Thrones. Yeah. You could be convicted of multiple federal felonies for producing a cable TV show like Game of Thrones. First of all. Second of all, how do you think the Joe Rogan manosphere bro culture would feel about the federal government banning pornography, banning any visual depiction of any kind of sexual activity in any form of media, including video games that include that type of stuff? They voted for this. A majority of them voted for this. Yeah, the bill basically makes a mockery of the First Amendment. I don't believe that it would survive any kind of First Amendment challenge in the courts. So let's talk about the standard that exists and how Mike Lee wants to change that. So the category of obscenity is one of the few categories of speech that contains exceptions to the First Amendment. There was a very famous quote from a Supreme Court justice. I should have looked it up. I didn't look it up. In a court decision that was like, "I don't know how to define pornography, but I know it when I see it." Me too. Because it's like, if you produce that kind of content that involves minors, that is not protected speech. That's not considered to be self-expression or anything of artistic value, because it contains kids, and you're not allowed to do that. That is an exception to the First Amendment. There is no federal law currently that defines what obscenity is, but I think the most recent Supreme Court case we have, Miller versus California, from 1973, there's a three-pronged test that they came up with in that case. And for something to be obscene, it must appeal to prurient interests. You know, prurient just means dirty, sexy, fun time. It must depict or describe sexual acts in a patently offensive way, and when taken as a whole, must lack any serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And if the production in question fails to meet any of those three prongs, then it's not obscene. If it meets all three of them, then it's obscene, and it's carved out from the First Amendment, and you can wag your finger at it, I guess. I don't know. So in determining whether something lacks any serious literary, artistic, political, and scientific value, the court in that case required the application of the reasonable person standard. And determining if something appeals to the prurient interests and is offensive requires asking whether the average person applying contemporary adult community standards would think that that's obscene. And this is supposed to ensure that we're not declaring things criminally obscene just because a vocal minority of people thinks it is, or because of standards that are no longer in touch with current times or circumstances. Chief Justice Warren Burger wrote for the majority in the Miller case, explicitly rejecting that the idea that there should be a nationwide standard for obscenity law. And he wrote the following: "It is neither realistic nor constitutionally sound to read the First Amendment as requiring that the people of Maine or Mississippi accept the public depiction of conduct found tolerable in Las Vegas or New York City." And that's kind of what they mean by a community standard. Because what people in rural Illinois find to be obscene would probably not be found to be obscene in Las Vegas or Manhattan. So Mike Lee wants to keep those first two prongs, the prurient interests, a patently offensive depiction of sexual activity, but he does want that nationwide standard. He basically wants to substitute his judgment of what's obscene for every community throughout the entire country. And this is a really dangerous thing because it tries to keep up with technology and its language, and the language as it's written could invade your text messages and photos that you may text to your significant other or whoever. The uninvited dick pic would fall under this statute, and you could be guilty of a felony for doing that. You probably should be guilty of a felony for doing that. If you send a picture of your junk to somebody who didn't ask for that, that might not be a bad idea. But whatever. It's, he is very clear that he wants to ban all access to pornography nationwide in any form. Print, video, animated, everything. And he wants to make felonies of producing it, participating in the production of it, and distributing it, and streaming it, hosting it on a website. He wants to make that all felonies. And this would apply to so many different things in our society. It's just incredibly dangerous and puritanical and stupid. And it's like, you look at Mike Lee and you're like, that guy could probably benefit from watching some porn, frankly.